Holy smokes. A trade, 2 baseball games, all with the same 2 teams. What a day in Blue Jays land.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. As always, I'm Brayden Wasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Brayden5 Wasco. Carter First, too, as well on our main Twitter account at Locked On Jays. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. And please, if you haven't already, it's free to do so. Hit the subscribe button on the YouTube page. It helps us out. You guys get everything, your shorts, your live streams, your videos, the podcasts, the whole ordeal. And it is free. So why not, right? If you're listening to more than one of these episodes ever, you might as well hit the subscribe button. Doesn't hurt anybody. And we do appreciate it. You guys have been fantastic. The comments, the likes, the everybody coming into the live streams, the subscriptions. You guys are unbelievable. So big thank you to you guys. This is a huge time in Toronto Blue Jays land with this team being so good, saying that they're on a 4-game slide. So we'll get into all that. But first, obviously, the big news of the day, the Toronto Blue Jays do make a trade with the Baltimore Orioles. So we'll start with that, but we will get and talk about the games that happen and that I wish we could forget. And then obviously 2 days left before the trade deadline. We'll break all of that down with sort of what we expect coming up as well. The final game before the trade deadline, the fourth and final game against the Baltimore Orioles in this series here. Carter, my man, the Toronto Blue Jays trade for Seranthony Dominguez, a guy that we sort of both assumed they would be asking about because it was brought up on the broadcast a few days ago. So we knew it was a guy they were after. I think we thought it was a possibility, but you never really know around trade deadlines of what's for certain, what they're going to make work. This one did, and of course, it was in between the 2 ball games, so he just walked across the diamond, and there he was. Now he's a Toronto Blue Jay. Thoughts, feelings, do you want to break down? I do have to mention that Shi Davidi was the first one to break the news, so shout out Shi. But how do you feel? What are your thoughts and feelings?
Yeah, I guess we'll first just jump into the whole encompassing trade what happened on the Tuesday afternoon, the first trade of the Toronto Blue Jays trade deadline, Seranthony Dominguez, and then the Toronto Blue Jays get some cash. So it's obviously a very fun time. Obviously, nobody's going to complain about getting cash. Maybe give it back to the Rogers consumers. That might be a little bit more helpful. But Seranthony Dominguez, the main piece, obviously, for Jauron Watts Brown, the Toronto Blue Jays 10th rated prospect, was a 3rd round pick in 2023. Hasn't really shot up the prospect ranks up until this year. Has been, I guess, relatively disappointing. Again, young guy drafted in 2023, is 23 years old. Does have a good slider, is one of his better pitches. A guy that has had a pretty good bounce back, especially in terms of the swing and miss. Does have 53 strikeouts in 51.2 innings pitched in high A, I believe it is right now. So again, slowly progressing up. I think he actually did progress up to AA. So a big addition for the Orioles. Should be more of a win-win situation. The Orioles get a pitching prospect, which they obviously need a lot of, looking at the pitching rotation that they have right now, even though it is kind of dominating the Toronto Blue Jays. But the Blue Jays get a fireballer in return, a guy that will probably be rolled out in middle leverage, a guy that does have some good swing and miss stuff, does get chases, does get the whiffs. The only unfortunate part with Seranthony Dominguez is that his walk rate is sky high. Has a 13.7 walk rate. That is the 6th highest among relief pitchers. Not what you want to see in a big moment, and that's why I have him in that middle relief spot, because this is kind of how this experience, I think, is going to go down for the Toronto Blue Jays, is that when he is around the strike zone and when he is throwing strikes fairly consistently, it's going to be really fun to watch. He throws 98 consistently. The splitter is very good. The sweeper, again, when he locates it, is a very nasty pitch as well. So when this guy is throwing strikes and getting that swing and miss, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be like, holy crap, this guy could be the closer. People might say, he could be better than Jeff Hoffman just based off the sheer stuff that this guy has. But then you're going to get the odd start, the odd outing, maybe every 4th time, maybe 5th time out, where he is not going to be able to throw a strike, where he is going to struggle to throw the strike zone. And you saw that a couple of times just in this Baltimore Orioles outing, where he kind of struggled to get first pitch strikes, threw a sweeper to Daniel Carlson that was not even close to the strike zone, hit him in the foot, first pitch of an at bat to the 9-hitter. That's not the guy you want to hit. So obviously that didn't matter in the big picture, but there's going to be a little bit of streakiness, I think, with the Seranthony Dominguez acquisition. But in totality, when you look at this, it's one of those trades that's going to depend on what else the Toronto Blue Jays do. If this is their only trade piece, a lot of people probably won't be happy and let's say they're very underwhelmed. But if this is just the start of the domino effect, and it's just one guy that they're going to get, one middle relief arm, they still maybe get that high leverage arm. 2 would be awesome. There's some other conversations that we have to have about some other possible trade targets as well, because a couple of holes in the Toronto Blue Jays roster, I think, have been exposed over these last few games. But I think overall it should be a win-win for both sides, but especially the Toronto Blue Jays. And if they can go on a run, he can be a massive factor in this bullpen.
Yeah, I think everybody's came to the same conclusion on this trade is that, it's a good trade. I think that you gave up what, not anything crazy, and you got a guy that's going to help the bullpen that pushes Chad Green out of the lineup, which we were all sort of thinking was going to happen, and that was going to be the move. Sure enough. Yep. So no, I think everybody's on the same boat here. This is a solid move, but you still need more. This can't be it. You hit the nail on the head. I was obviously tuned into the live stream. I was at work, but you did a fantastic job. I think you sort of laid this out perfectly of there just needs to be more. I look back at, 2015, 16 and the moves that were made and how this team got upgraded. And I still think that needs to be a path that this team now takes this season. Is you can't just stand pat. You can't just be the team that sits back on their heels, adds a little piece and expects to go to the World Series. You need to get better and you need to add players. That's what trade deadline is for. That's what this little piece of the puzzle is for. Looking at Dominguez's baseball savant, just looking at how he throws his pitches, where he throws his pitches, he's a fireball. He is throws gas. But the problem is you are right. He is all over the zone. I mean, not one of his pitches is centralized to a certain location in the strike zone. A lot of the times, if you see a guy throwing, his fastball here, his curveball here, that's where his hot zones are. Dominguez is not that. The pitches literally go all over the place, and there is no consistency, really. But in saying that, he has had success and can get success. To be honest, when I look at Dominguez's stat page, it's almost the exact opposite of Eric Lauer, where a lot of the stats look good for Dominguez. It's just, will he have his command? And so that's the biggest question there for me is this going to be a situation where every second time you go out and throw him, he has a little bit of some problems? Maybe. That may be what's happening. So I don't want to be over the moon. I'm not saying this is the best move ever, but I think overall this is a quite solid move for this team.
Yeah, you can't complain about it whatsoever. But I was being asked when I was in the live stream, just shout out to everyone that did join that live as well. I was being asked where I wanted to throw Seranthony Dominguez, like what scenarios, I would use Seranthony Dominguez in. With the Baltimore Orioles, he did have a kind of setup role. And again, that middle to higher leverage relief role, had 13 holds, a guy that will have an effective role in this Toronto Blue Jays bullpen. But if you're John Schneider, where are you rolling out Seranthony Dominguez, and where kind of is he with your level of trust in the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen the way it's constructed right now?
Yeah, obviously the regular season, he's going to be thrown in some different roles. That's just how it is. All these bullpen guys are throwing in different situations. But if we're talking about it from a playoff atmosphere, which we might as well start to do, I don't want him being the setup guy. I want the setup right now to be either Brennan Little, Yariel Rodriguez or Jimmy Garcia when he comes back into Hoffman to close out the game. But I don't think it's we're getting kicked or we're up a ton, we might as well just throw him. No, I think he'll be sort of in that middle ground, maybe a 6th or 7th inning type of role where he comes in, tries to get you 3 outs. And it all depends on where and when you face teams' top batters. Do you want him facing certain guys? I think he's more of a pitcher that it doesn't necessarily depend on the guys he's facing. It's more just if he has his stuff that day, because I think he can have success against some really good guys in this league. But if he's missing the strike zone and can't control pitches some days, that's where we'll get into trouble. So I don't necessarily think that it is a matchup dependent type of pitcher, which is a good thing because you can throw him in some, bigger situations against some better players, but I don't think it's necessarily a setup role.
See, I think when you say it's matchup based, I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, it's the bottom of the order compared to
That's
the top
right.
of the order. I
Yeah.
think you can get anyone out in that sense, but you don't want to throw Seranthony Dominguez against left-handed hitters. Left-handed hitters have been mashing off of Dominguez. So when I was being asked this question, they asked me if I wanted Dominguez to kind of be this setup guy to roll into Jeff Hoffman. And this was my response to that. At the time, I said not at the start. Now that I've had some time, obviously, to kind of digest the trade, look into the situations. I think the way the regular season will roll out is that the way that this bullpen is currently constructed with some of the injuries, and again, we haven't seen who else is going to complement this bullpen. I don't want Dominguez in that eighth inning role. I like him in the seventh role a lot because if he does have one of those outings where he struggles a little bit, you still have other guys that can kind of pick up the slack if things do kind of go awry. But with the way pitching works and the way the bullpen usage works, is that a lot of the time we've seen it already. The Blue Jays bullpen is taxed, so you kind of have to do this thing where a lot of times you got to throw who's available. So I think with Dominguez, the way this bullpen's constructed, with who you trust right now, especially for those higher leverage situations, I think a lot of the time you're going to have to go Brendan Little and some sort of combination like Yariel Rodriguez, maybe Jeff Hoffman and Dominguez, Brendan Little and Dominguez, whatever that ends up being. I think right now, until you get Yimi Garcia, either a trade deadline piece or Nick Sandlin, he probably will be a guy that you see rolled out in the eighth inning. But that's the only issue, is that my biggest pet peeve in watching bullpen arms is that you can watch Chad Green give up meatballs day in and day out, and that does suck. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not going to say I'm happy that I'm seeing him DFA, but that saga was getting a little bit old, seeing Chad Green throw a fastball right down the middle and it getting absolutely torn apart. But even worse than that is when you see a pitcher just not able to locate and not able to throw strikes whatsoever. And it's ball four. And then that, before you know it, he gives up 3 free passes. It's 1 single, and then there's 2 runs. And you're like, what the hell happened in this game? So that for me is the most frustrating thing, is when you give up free passes. You can't give up free passes in the major leagues. Walks can hurt teams so much. So I think just for me, if it's, again, especially a playoff scenario, or if it's a scenario where they're just playing a good baseball team, just with the lack of command and control that Dominguez can possess at times, I wouldn't be the most comfortable, again, consistently at least, throwing him out in high leverage.
Yeah, I agree. That's exactly. So me and you are pretty much on the same page then, right? So, and I think a lot of Blue Jays fans are. I think a lot of Blue Jays fans see what he is and see him for what he is. He's not a complete game changer, but he's some very good backup for this bullpen. And that's exactly what we were looking for. We said you needed one guy that's like a Seranthony Dominguez, and then you need a guy that's going to be a pretty much stud eighth inning setup, maybe even swapping time with Hoffman for the closing roles. And that's sort of what we were looking for out of a secondary move. And will that happen? I mean, again, there's 2 days left. So there is time, and we'll talk about this more in the third segment. I don't want to give too much away, but how much time is left? Are you starting to panic? We'll talk about all that coming up in the third segment. But Carter, we do have obviously 2 games to go over. We're not going to spend a crazy amount of time because Game 1 was not great, to say the absolute least. So I don't know. Do you have anything left in regards to this trade? I know you went over quite a bit of it in the live stream, so I don't want to overly repeat a ton. But anything left that you want to say?
Yeah, not too much. Just right now, I think Dominguez is probably somewhere in that 4th or 5th spot with a guy you trust. That will probably change as this trade deadline does progress. But I think to start, at least, Ross Atkins made a pretty good move here on this one. But like you said, ton more that we want to get into, not necessarily because we really want to. It's just kind of because it happened. Not a very good stretch here for the Toronto Blue Jays, but we will dive into all of it right after this short break.
Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. You guys know how much I love Game Time. I talk about it all the time when I'm with my friends and they ask me, what ticketing app do you use? Because, people know that we have a code. And I'm like, well, go to Game Time. It is the best. I would not endorse something that I don't love and don't trust. And Game Time is that. It is my absolute go-to ticketing site. And we've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets or game tickets or wherever it may be, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. It might be the thing that kills me, is waiting for tickets and you think, wow, I got a good spot in this queue, and you get booted as you try to go in and get tickets. It is so frustrating. Game Time makes getting tickets even easier and faster. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime or game time, and you can save up to 60% off with killer last-minute deals. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. So, Carter, continuing on, we talked about the trade and something we probably don't necessarily want to talk about, but we have to. The Blue Jays played 2 games against the Baltimore Orioles. They are on a 4-game slide as they lose both of those. The first one 16-4 and the second one 3-2 and a little bit of a heartbreaker. The first game, Carter, for me, immediately I knew this was not going the Toronto Blue Jays way. It just had the making of a disastrous second game, which I think we both thought could happen, or the fact that this team might have to look for a split as an option. Obviously, now that's down the toilet as well. This is before we dive into the game, I just want to put throw some water on the fire instead. We assumed that a slide was going to happen eventually. This team was not going to go out and win every single baseball game. So I don't want people freaking out that, oh my goodness, it's 4 games they've lost. If you get to a 5-6 game losing streak, yeah, okay. Maybe panic a little bit. But
I mean, that's 1 game away. 5 game losing streaks, 1 game away.
Yeah, it is. But that's dropping a whole series to the Orioles, a 4-game series, right? There's a difference. You can lose a series and you can still end up being okay. I don't know if you can get swept in a series and feel okay about that, even though you did go through a great stretch. But I think right now, with 1 game left to play, if they pull out this final game, you're in a better space, at least. Because if you get swept here, I think there is a little bit of panic that starts to creep into the back of Blue Jays fans' minds. But right now, don't panic yet. There is still a game, so don't freak out. Don't say, oh, this team had... There's going to be other fan bases that come for the Blue Jays' throats here and say, oh, we knew that this was just a hot streak, blah, 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 that they come back down to earth. Well, of course they will. They're not going to only lose 4 games of every 23 games. That's just not going to happen out of an entire baseball season. So I just want to throw that out there. But yeah, you're right. If they get swept, I'll be upset. And we might have to have a different conversation for sure.
Well, and every team has pretty much gone through a slump like this, albeit, they don't give up 40 runs in their last 40 games. So that's part of it, is the way the Toronto Blue Jays are losing. They're not losing 2-1, 5-4. They're losing 10-4, 16-4, 11-4. Like, these are absolute blowout games. So in that sense, it's not very fun. But look at the Houston Astros, lost 5 in a row. The Detroit Tigers, when we rolled into Comerica Park, they lost 11 out of 12. The Los Angeles Dodgers at one point lost 10 of 13. The Padres, when we swept them, their offense was abysmal. So you look around the league, you look at a lot of these juggernauts. I mean, the Yankees, look what they're doing after the All-Star break. So you look around at a lot of these teams, and teams are going to go through these stretches. 162 games is a very long time. I mean, look at what the Athletics did earlier on the season. The White Sox, and I think the Marlins at one point had the longest winning streak on the year. So it's baseball. Weird things are going to happen. But again, when you lose the way the Toronto Blue Jays are losing, it's very unfortunate. But at least in this first game for me, just kind of taking a step back from the beatdown that we absolutely got, I think the bigger takeaway here is this exposed a lot of the Toronto Blue Jays holes on this roster. Is that you had a doubleheader, so you weren't able to use one of your 5 rotation arms. But say if Chris Bassitt kind of set this up as well. Say Chris Bassitt has a bad day, or somebody else has a bad day as well. This kind of goes in the green of it all. Well, we'll start on the starting rotation. If one guy that goes down, knock on wood, God forbid this doesn't happen. If one of these guys goes down, you're relying on an Easton Lucas. And I think out of all the games we saw, at least from a stuff perspective, maybe location and command is a different issue. I think stuff-wise, some of the best stuff we saw from Easton Lucas all year. He was touching 97, consistently sitting 95, 96. The slider looks pretty good at times as well. But he's just not a major league caliber pitcher for a team that's going to try to win the AL East, going to try to go on a big playoff run. And you look at Lazaro Estrada, a guy that was kind of like a deeper bullpen option. Again, not a guy you necessarily want to rely on, but look at Chad Green down the stretch, a guy that was going out in lower to middle leverage innings. You saw there, Chad Green cannot be pitching on a playoff roster. So I think when you look at if there's an injury in the starting rotation, and just with a couple of these bullpen arms as well, like Mason Flaherty's being rolled out there, it's not a bad option. But is that a guy you want to go against like a 1, 2, 3 in an order? Tommy Nance, who's been very good, same idea though. He's like your 6th or 7th option right now, albeit there's some injuries. Is that a guy you want to go against Aaron Judge, like Paul Goldschmidt, Cody Bellinger in a big scenario? So I think this game in totality exposed that if you have one injury on the starting rotation, which we kind of knew already, this team is in some trouble. And then bullpen arms, like if the way baseball works, you have to use a lot of these guys. You have one little blow up from your starting rotation, and then all of a sudden some guys aren't available. The depth really gets tested fast. So that's one encompassing thing that I definitely noticed from the first game of the series.
Yeah, and there's not a lot really to take away. This team got killed, and my biggest takeaway from at least the the Easton Lucas of it all is, and you're right, you saw some of his best stuff, but the biggest problem isn't the stuff. At the end of the day, these are major league players, and to beat major league players, you have to have very good pitch tunneling. It's the defining factor almost of what makes a player MLB ready or not. There's a lot of guys have good stuff, but if you can tunnel pitches and you can sequence pitches, at the end of the day, that's what's going to help you. And the pitch tunneling just was not there whatsoever. He was not using misses. He was not using the pitches that were successful. And that's what kills you. And that's the one thing I've been noticing more and more as I've been watching more baseball, is that's how you can tell who's a very good pitcher and who's not so much, is how they use every pitch that they throw. And he didn't have it. This is just game. I mean, Carter, we could talk about whatever here. The team had 11 hits. I think the biggest storyline taking away from this entire series so far is not capitalizing on runners in scoring position. This team was absolutely abysmal this entire series so far, something that they've been very good at. But it comes down to the fact that Bichette has been very good when he comes up with the runners in scoring position. And this series so far, he hasn't been. And so not even this series so far, I'll say these two games yesterday, to be honest. Yeah. And so this whole team is in general, if Bichette's not doing it, the one guy you really rely on to do that, the rest of the guys, they didn't have a good day. This has not been the Blue Jays series. And I don't really have a ton to say. That's just it. That was a pummling.
Yeah, not a lot of good things. When you have to rely on Easton Lucas, Lazaro Estrada to kind of get you some outs, it's not going to be a good scenario. And I would get mad at the offense in this game. Again, I'm not going to expect the offense to score 17 runs, I'll tell you that. But Charlie Morton is not a good pitcher whatsoever. And you let this guy get a quality start. I mean, again, that's a little bit of nitpicking here because this is not the offense's fault, but we've kind of seen a little bit of a common theme over the last, again, small sample size, only 3 or 4 games, but the offense starting to revert to a little bit of the ways we saw very early on here in 2025, where they are getting runners on, they are having opportunities, but they're not able to drive runners in when it matters. And I think we got to say, a little bit of a proper goodbye to Chad Green. I think Ross Atkins in the front office saw Chad Green give up his 13th and 14th home run of the season. That's 2 more than any other relief pitcher in the major leagues. And he said, "Hey, don't worry, buddy. We got your stuff packed. Get on out of here. We got you taken care of. We got your bags. Just I want to see your face again," because that was absolutely horrific. We've seen that multiple times this season. Again, between games, and there was 2.5 hours between games.
Just enough time for a dog.
Exactly. They made that pretty quick. Just enough time to do the 999 challenge, watching another team play baseball in between games. But just some insane stuff we're seeing from Chad Green. Again, very good career. So we are clowning him a little bit too much here. But the Toronto Blue Jays did a lot of good things as well. Just never really found himself at all during the season.
No, and it is sad. Don't get me wrong. He was a guy that did a job. I think he was pretty solid last year. It's just that when you're leaving balls over the middle of the plate, you can't. You got to be a major league pitcher. And that's not a guy that you can have on a World Series winning team. You said it best. But in saying all of that, Carter, you said you don't necessarily want to blame the offense. I agree with you. I think the way this
blame the offense,
not even for the first game though. I'm saying even for the second game, which I guess we can just talk about.
Yeah,
I'm in this almost in the same boat. You get absolutely shelled. We talked about this last season, where sometimes the pitchers, you go in and the offense is doing nothing last year. How do you keep up the mentality to fight back? And this team has been very good. This offense has been very good at battling back. Right? They've been down runs. They found ways to generate, to produce, to get back into ball games. They've been able to do that. That first game, I think, is an absolute mentality killer. I think after that game, to go in and expect to do anything proper in that second game, don't get me wrong, these guys get paid a lot of money, but baseball's a mental game, and I think this team was checked out, Carter.
I just think this team, not as much from the first loss. I just think, 13 games in 13 days and the absolute scorcher that it was in Baltimore was starting to get to the boys a little bit. And again, you're not playing good baseball. That definitely dampens the mood. But you have to blame the offense a little bit in the second game. I mean, you have to. You're going against Brandon Young, who had a 7.5 ERA going into this game, has not had a lot of starts in the major leagues, that has had zero success in the major leagues. And you had bases loaded in the first inning. Yeah. You had runners on third and second. In the second inning, you score one there on a very lucky swing by Nathan Lucas, where he's 3 light years ahead of a curveball inside and hits the end of his bat, little nub right on the tip of it. And then Ernie Clement makes a good play. That's how you drive in one of the runs. I mean, this offense time and time again against a guy that's not proven in the league. And look at the Orioles pitching staff. We talk about how bad the starting rotation is. This is the 27th man they pulled up for a doubleheader. This is a guy that probably should not be pitching on most competitive major league teams. That's why he's pitching for the Baltimore Orioles and that atrocious pitching staff. The offense allowed him to go 6 innings and only scored 2 runs. I think you got to have at least some sort of the blame for sure on this offense.
Yeah, and maybe I said that wrong. Not that I don't want to blame the offense, but I get the game aspect of it. So maybe it's not that they don't hold blame, and maybe I should have said that. It's the fact that I understand more than I don't blame them, I guess. Is I can understand the mentality of playing in a doubleheader after your team just gets shelled. You go take 2 hours off. I can understand the mentality from it. Maybe you're right. Maybe they have to be to blame because you have to score with runners in scoring position. But I think from a mentality perspective, I mean, Carter, me and you used to play double headers as kids, and we would, you're pumped up to play and you're just jazzed that you're out on the ball diamond. And sometimes you don't even care. You're just hoping you get orange slices in between games. And we still go out and throw up a dud because we just got shelled 27-3 in 4 innings. So no, I understand, I guess. I'm not reading into this double header maybe as much as other people are, just because your team got killed, and that sucks the life out of anybody.
See, I'm not really agreeing with that whatsoever, because you're seeing Eric Lauer battling on the mound. That should get you some sort of inspired to realize, hey, like my starting pitcher is really fighting for me here. This is a big game against an AL East opponent, where if you at least win that game, and we're looking at this now, the Blue Jays being down 2-1 in the series, having a chance to tie a series tomorrow or the day that this is coming out, I think we're in a lot better of a mental state than we are right now. So yeah, I don't think that just because the pitching was bad, I know consistently in the last 3 games, they were really bad. And that is a little bit mentally defeating, but you're seeing a guy who's battling his butt off. He's sweating through his jersey in the second inning. Like, this guy's giving it his all, and that's not even going to inspire you a little bit. So I think, at some point you got to hold the offense accountable, even though they have been really good recently. But from what we've seen in the last couple of games, again, it's mostly been the pitching. But I think if you're going to blame the offense for any game, and you're going to have a little bit of merit to blame the offense in any game, it has to be the second game of the doubleheader.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. I've seen them do very good things lately, and I just don't necessarily feel like I want to come crashing down on them quite yet. Don't get me wrong. It was bad. Like I said, this team has to score with runners in scoring position. They have to do a better job of that. Yeah, I'm not oblivious to that. It's just, they've been so good. I'm not quite at the point yet where I'm ready to throw full blame.
So you're not throwing full blame at the offense, or not throwing full blame at the Toronto Blue Jays? Because if you're not blaming the offense, then who are you blaming? You're blaming Eric Lauer for giving up 2 runs? Or are you giving up Jeff Hoffman because he hasn't pitched in a week and he gave up a couple hard hit balls? Who are you blaming for this loss?
Well, like you said, I don't know. There's a lot of things that go into. Obviously, it's the offense. You got to score more than 2 runs. But I'm not saying that. But I also understand that this is 14 games in 13 days. This team goes on an absolute tear to start the after the All-Star break, and is first in the league. And we're getting bent out of shape over a 3-2 loss one day that they don't score 4 runs is just insane to me. I don't necessarily feel that after one game of scoring 2 runs, we're going to throw this offense to the wolves.
Yeah, that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just saying, obviously, in the second game of the doubleheader, you want to win that game. And I'm not saying the sky is falling here in Toronto Blue Jays line. You're still pretty comfortably up in the AL East, but you're using a little bit of the leeway that you've given yourself here. And especially if you do, I don't even want to say the word, but if tomorrow doesn't go, or today it doesn't go the way that you want it to go, that's not going to look good when you look back at the schedule and you look at the stretch, especially when you started the All-Star break after that with just a dominant stretch. And I'd rather you, I guess, beat those teams, because it's going to matter more, at least for tiebreakers and things like that, than the Baltimore Orioles. But it's just frustrating when you've seen your team play such a good brand of baseball and such a good caliber of baseball, and against really good pitching too. Like we talked about, Logan Webb, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, Robbie Ray. Like, it didn't matter who they were going against. They were dominating the really good pitchers. And then all of a sudden, Charlie Morton and Brandon Young come into town. And it's just the greatest pitchers of all time. So I think that's where the frustration does come from a little bit for Toronto Blue Jays fans. I completely understand it.
Yeah, I do too. And like I said, I'm just not quite ready to get bent out of shape. I think, like I said early in this podcast, if tomorrow, or as people are listening to this today, goes poorly and this doesn't go, then I'll probably be in a different headspace because you just got swept by a bottom AL East team. And that's never okay. I don't care how great or poorly that you're playing as the AL East leaders, the AL leaders, you can't drop 4 straight to a divisional opponent. That just can't happen. So you're right. Maybe I will feel differently tomorrow if this goes the other way, but I'm just not. Yeah, I don't want to. I don't even want to put the bad energy out there with how this team has been. I was banging the desk at work watching that game. I was getting frustrated. I knew that this team was not scoring with runners in scoring position. It just wasn't happening. I pretty much said when Bichette took, that last swing was one of the worst swings I've ever seen in my entire life.
Oh yeah, we do have to talk about that. Like, what is Bichette doing there? Like, that does make me a little nervous. Letting the Twitter Warriors win a little bit here, but I've seen the takes go crazy. He's being like, oh, like if you can't get a hit, at least a competitive swing, not even a hit, it's a competitive swing. In a big scenario, 2 outs, run in scoring position, where it's just a random game against the Orioles. People are trying to spin this on this. How is he supposed to get a hit in a big scenario in the playoffs?
Yeah.
And again, like, that can't make you feel good about that scenario, but I think that's definitely an overreaction based on what we've seen. But yeah, that's a tough one to defend Bichette on, unfortunately.
That was a terrible swing. But in the same respect, he's the guy that we've been talking about. Hey, who do you want the bat in their hands in a bigger situation? Because Bichette's been that guy all, for the last 2 months.
Well, that was the craziest part about that swing, is that he's been one of the best players in the league in those kind of moments. But again, maybe that's a little bit of difference that you were talking about with the runners in scoring position, where, it's a little bit different coming up in the second inning with the runner on third base compared to, the ninth inning, 2 outs, runners on third and second. So that stat, not necessarily misleading, but not in capturing the whole picture and then the whole encompassing focus of that stat and what people tend to believe when they see runners in scoring position stats.
And that's baseball, right? That's when me and you talk about eye test, and me and you have conversations like that. That's why we always tell people these statistics you can't just look at as the basis for everything. You have to watch the games and understand big situations, because otherwise, if you're just spitting a take that, oh, well, Vlad's got these stats, so he must be great. Well, what does he do in the ninth inning, right? So again, it goes back to my argument from, I don't know how many weeks ago that was, but again, I don't really want to be super upset and super angry right now. Tomorrow goes differently. Maybe I will be, but that swing, I had to bring it up because it was, I threw a desk slam in there for sure.
Yeah, it looked like when me and you were playing twos on MLB, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to lock in here. It's a big moment in the game. And then he throws me a high fastball, and I just have no idea where the ball is whatsoever. And I think it's all of a sudden
slamming the stick down.
I'm not even going up. I'm not even going the right direction. I'm going down, and then I'm swinging the garden hose out there, and Brayden's calling me every name in the book, and I feel just absolutely amazing about myself. But we do have, again, one more game to try to save the series here. Needs, honestly, for maybe a few Toronto Blue Jays mental beings and to stop the sky from falling. I think the Toronto Blue Jays would be very grateful if they got a win here, just kind of avoid some of the backlash they would probably see on a lot of social media platforms. But again, we got a series preview, ton more we want to get into, and we're going to dive right into that after this short break. Today's episode is sponsored by 5-Hour Energy Transfusions. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with your friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off the course, you just need an energy boost or to stay sharp and energized. Yeah, whether you're with the kids, maybe sometimes you're at work, you're on the golf course and it's not going too well, 5-Hour Energy Transfusions are the perfect little substitute. If you don't want to go with an alcohol option, you can always go with their option. Perks you right up on the golf course, absolutely dials you in to make those memories and hopefully not even make those birdies, but maybe make some eagles. And if you make a hole-in-one, you're probably going to have a fun time with your friends after that as well. So golf is all about the good times with good people and the good flavors. Of course, the grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of the clubhouse to go the go-to without chasing the bev down at the bev cart. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LockedOnGolf to receive 20% off your order. That offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5-hour energy shots today.
Oh, sorry, Carter. There you go. So 2 days left in the trade deadline. One game against the Orioles remaining in this little series they got going, this 4-game set. I guess let's just end it off here for this episode. 2 days left, one game left. How do you feel about both? And I'll take your opinion, and then you can shoot it back over to me. And that'll be today's episode, because we decide to take every episode insanely long because it is trade deadline. It is exciting. It is big news. So.
Yeah, a little bit nerve-wracking with Jose Berrios on the mound, and I say that just because the Orioles offense looks hot right now. I know they just played the Rockies, but I think they had an 18-run performance before we kind of rolled into town, and what have the Orioles done? They've put up a few big spots on us, so that does make me a little nervous for Jose Berrios, who is known to give up a moonball or two. So, maybe it might be Gunnar Henderson. I might have a Ryan O'Hearn home run. So we're going to need the Toronto Blue Jays offense to probably score, more than 2 runs. That might be ideal. But then we're going to need the bullpen not to fall apart. We're going to need the Toronto Blue Jays from last week maybe to appear once again for this final day at Camden Yards. Again, just a big series, maybe not for like the season in totality, but I think for just a lot of fans' mental states. Just, kind of bringing back a little bit of the bad vibes here as well. But maybe what can save the bad vibes, even if it's not a win in that baseball game, maybe it's a David Bednar transaction. Maybe it's Joe Ryan. Maybe it's Johan Duran. That's kind of funny storyline. Him hugging his bullpen mates in the Twins bullpen. Everyone freaking out, thinking he got traded to the Phillies. Nope, he's still there right now. Still has the opportunity to come to the Toronto Blue Jays. So that would be something fun to wake up to the day that this podcast does release. Or, Thursday, or, anytime before the trade deadline. I don't think we're really going to complain if we get Johan Duran. But, we need a win here, just for a lot of people's mental states, and mine included. I want to see a little bit of a bounce-back performance, especially with the softer schedule coming up. This is a good time to take advantage of some weaker teams. Yeah,
I was going to say, me and you haven't really had like a good, solid debate in a while. And, we're throwing it back and forth over, one of the top team in the league, but this is what happens when you lose 4 games straight. I guess it gets everybody a little on edge. Me and you just decided to go at it. I love it. And sometimes the podcast listeners say like, oh, these two never disagree. They just have the same thoughts sometimes. And it's like, well, when you have a winning baseball team, it's a lot easier to think the same thing. But 4-game slide, it brings it out of you.
It's also hard to get mad at like anything going on when your team wins, like 18 out of 23 baseball games. It's like, oh, well, George Springer made a dumb play and didn't slide it home. Oh, well, we won the baseball game, so who cares? Yeah, so it's just easier to, kind of forgive and forget pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm in the same boat with you. This is, I think, just a mentally must-win game. But honestly, I'm just so in tune with these trades right now. I just want to see something come out. So I hate to say it, but like as much as I'm still sitting there watching ball, it's just the scenarios of trades running through my head right now. So as much as this is important to the mentality of the team and the mentality of the fan base, I think if a trade drops right after you maybe get swept, does it help your thought process? It probably takes your mind off of it. And that's very well what could happen. So again, we'll have a lot to talk about in the next few days, obviously with the series finishing up, the trade deadline coming to a close. I'm just excited. It's a great time and spot to be in for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, and I got the positive spin zone that we can kind of take into this trade deadline is that the Toronto Blue Jays are playing horrific baseball, like I kind of said before in an earlier segment, to expose the holes on this team. They're making Ross Atkins buy. If you had any doubts before that, hey, maybe you need a high-leverage bullpen arm, hey, maybe you need a starting pitcher, there you go, Ross. It's right in front of you now. You see what happens when you have to throw Easton Lucas, what happens when you have to throw Chad Green. Maybe go out and, go and be a little bit more aggressive at this trade deadline. Still have a couple more days, but you can tell that there is still, again, a couple holes in this Toronto Blue Jays ball club. Still a very good baseball team, but it can only get better, and it only will get better if Ross Atkins continues to be aggressive in a position where he is going to be a buyer at the trade deadline. I think all we can really do is just have trust in Ross Atkins, which is kind of a crazy thing to say, especially when we were looking at this 2024 roster. That's something we're going to have to bring up after this trade deadline. We're going to have to see what moves he makes, but also just how we feeling about Ross Atkins. Things are a little bit different this year than they were last year, and you don't talk really about a GM if things are going well, unless they're going exceptionally well, which I guess they kind of are with the Toronto Blue Jays up to this point. But Brayden, is there anything else you want to kind of throw into this episode before we do take off for the night?
I just want to see Ryan Helsley on this team. That's all I really want. Like at the end of the day, I want that. I'm going to end it here. Actually, the two things I want, because I was on the CJOB Sports Show tonight talking about a little bit about the Jays and what I want. You know what? Take me back to 2015, 2016. The David Price, the Tulowitzki. Give me one more pitcher and give me a solid bat. I don't care. I'm in now. I'm in. I want somebody that's going to come in here and add a little spark to this offense as well. So I've sort of changed my mind on that. I just want something big to happen. I don't care necessarily what it is. I just think adding a spark to this team would be huge.
No, let's just get everybody from Minnesota Twins. Like, let's get Duran, let's get Varland, let's get, Harrison Bader, throw Joe Ryan in there. Why not? Let's just make an absolute blockbuster. Give up, every one of our prospects. We'll keep Trey just because, but like you can have everyone else. Give away the top 6 and let's just roll. Let's just see what happens. And I think if the Toronto Blue Jays can somehow pull off a World Series, for me personally, I don't next 5 years, whatever. Don't care what happens. We'll be thinking about that 2025 World Series that we did have in Toronto. Maybe getting just a slight touch ahead of ourselves on this podcast, but
who knows? Me and you for the next 5 years, we could both show up on the podcast with face tattoos of a World Series championship. That's what will happen. So. We won't. Yeah,
you'll put 20 and I'll have 25, and then we'll just have to, be together on this podcast, and you'll just always be reminded of what happened in the year 2025 for the Toronto Blue Jays. If only that can become a reality, I guess, for us on this podcast. I guess we will refrain from taking any more of your time, especially talking about, a little bit of the nonsense that always does come out at the end of these podcasts. But I just wanted to say thank you guys for watching. Yeah, again, on the live, whether it's on these podcasts, whether it's a short that we put out, whether we're talking on Discord, during our DMs, wherever the support is coming from, it comes from a multitude of apps. So that is definitely appreciated from us. But we're just excited to see, hopefully, a couple more transactions. I'm moving for at least one more, but 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll take all of them, Ross. So give them all to us. We'll be here to cover them all. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll talk to you guys again, hopefully sooner than later.